Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to all my Muslim students. Hi everyone. Okay, let's continue with our next measurement for the finishes. Now we have measurement for the wall finishes. So this is the continuity from the rule of measurement that you have done before and the measurement for the floor finishes. Okay, so as usual, the linear outcome, I expect all of you to must be able to at least identify the item to be measured, prepare in the proper taking of list, apply the principle to be measured in the BQ, the measure paper, and of course at the end you must be able to prepare the BQ. So basically what you understand with the term wall finishes. When we talk about wall finishes, as usual, you must be able to at least firstly identify that we have two main headings. Number one, external wall finishes. Then number two, we have internal wall finishes. So this is considered as the main heading, as what we have done before, external floor finishes, external internal floor finishes. So today, if you refer back to clause S.1.1, A and B, these are two requirements where you have to measure according to location. Okay, general rule are similar. If you look at the general rule, this is the main rule according to the location. And if you have different material, you have to measure under appropriate heading. This is also similar rule. So if you look at this photo, we are going to measure the wall finishes, the finishes of this wall. Either plaster or painting, or maybe plaster and painting, or maybe tiles and another type of material. Okay, for the curvature on plan, you also need to measure the curved material that is attached to it. So every time you see the curved wall or curve on plan, you must measure separately. So one of the requirement is to by stating the radius. Normally, if you need to measure the curve on plan, what is the term that we need to use? Build, curve, on plan. Then you have to write down with radius what. Okay, so this radius is according to the location as well. Let's say you are measuring the external wall finishes. External wall finishes that have the curve. So what you need to do is you need to take the dimension until the surfaces of external wall. If you are measuring the internal surfaces of the wall, you need to find the internal surfaces of the wall. This is very important because this will affect the answer given in terms of radius calculation. So if your radius is correct, your answer will be correct. If your radius is not correct, then the whole answer will be wrong. Okay, so these are the keywords that you need to understand. Work of a repairing nature shall be kept separately. Let's say you have the project where one part is going to be constructed again due to the maintenance. Another part needs to be constructed for the renovation. That means you need to construct the new one. So make sure you put this one under two different heading or two appropriate heading. Now let's go to the measurement principle. You can refer to your SMM under clause S.3. Okay, so under clause S.3, this is a main classification. Wood to wall and ceiling shall each be given separately. What does it mean? If you have the wall that is attached to ceiling, you have to decide this one will be under wall or this one under ceiling. That means if you have the wood for ceiling, if you have the wood for the wall, even though it is stated under the same clause in SMM, but you have to measure separately. Look at the word each. Shall each be given separately. Okay, now let's look at the important keyword here. Work to sides and soffit of attached beam and side of attached column shall be regarded as the work to the abutting wall or the ceiling. If you refer this one in 3D, for example, let's say I draw this one in 3D. You can see sometimes if you stay in the double-story house without having any ceiling finishes. Okay, let's say you are here, you can see the ceiling on the top and you can see the exposed beam. So what happened for these finishes? Are you going to measure under finishes or are you going to measure under ceiling finishes? So the work attached to or the surfaces of the beam that is exposed should be given under ceiling. because we don't have the finishes for the beam. And then let's say you have the column or column stump. We call this one as column stump because column because it is superstructure. So maybe something like this, and then this is your column. So faces of this column are attached to the wall. This is your wall. This is the wall. This is column. So the surfaces of the column attached to this column will be regarded as wall finishes. Okay, so this is the meaning of this sentence. Column attached to the wall must be measured under measurement of the wall finishes. So if I show this one in the layout plan, let's say you see this one in layout plan. Okay, in layout plan you can see this is the wall. Okay, and then this is actually the column. If I show you from the top view, this is actually the column. So what happened to these surfaces? If I change to the other color, what happened to these surfaces? 1, 2, 3. You have to measure this one under which category? Column finishes or wall finishes? Definitely is wall finishes. Okay, the finishes for this column shall be included in the measurement of wall finishes. Either this one is attached internally or externally, you have to measure under finishes. Okay, now look at this example. Look at this photo. These are the example of the column attached to the wall. So you have to measure the finishes for this one under external wall finishes. In this slide, I also would like to mention about the isolated component. Work to side of isolated beam and isolated column shall each be given separately. This is also in regards to this explanation where you understand that the beam is measured under ceiling finishes and the column finishes is measured under wall finishes. So it also same principle to the isolated component. Isolated means it is separated from the wall. It is independent structure. It is something that is not attached with something else. So that is the meaning of isolated. This is one of the example. You can see this one, even though there is no wall attached to it. Normally you can see this one at the garden outside. You have to measure under wall finishes, but you have to state isolated column. Same goes to this one. You have to paint this column, and this one also need to be painted. Definitely two different materials, so you have to use two different type of painting. So you have to measure separately. Okay, and then even though this painting, if I rub and I show you again, even though this painting, sorry, and this painting is maybe similar type. But let's say if this painting or if this column is attached with the wall, you cannot measure together with this one. You have to measure separately. Same goes to this column. This column is going to be painted. Maybe there are column here that is going to be painted, but you cannot measure together because one is isolated, one is not. Okay, so you have to measure separately as stated in S.3. Now let's look at the basic category of the wall finishes that we have in any building. Other than this, you have to measure in another category. Basically, when we have plaster, we have plaster and painting. Okay, so this is the first category, plaster and painting. Where you can see the plaster and painting, you can see this one outside in the building other than in the toilet or in the kitchen. Normally where you have the plaster and painting, okay, let's say this is your wall, this is your floor. Okay, let's say the floor having the skirting. On the top of this one will be your plaster and painting. If your floor is made of is going to be finished with the tiles, sometimes you can see the wall also is going to be finished with tiles, especially for the kitchen, for the bathroom. Okay, so that is where you have the screed and the block, or we call this one as the tiles, blocking, and the like. Okay, so if I write in two different category, number one, we call plaster and painting. This one, we have two items. One is plaster, another one is painting. Another one, we have plaster plus painting plus painting plus tiles plus script. Normally, you can see this one in the toilet. Or sometimes, you only have tiles and script. If tiles and script, this is normally where the tiles and script are installed in full height. In full height means according to the story height. According to the story height. HEIGHT. Okay, so these three are basic category. Okay, now if you look at in terms of item to be measured, as we know previously, plaster is considered as in situ finishing, and painting, as what you learn in staircase finishes, is something that you have to measure according to another section in section U. So definitely, now you can see there are two items to be measured for the first one. The second one, plaster, painting, and then you have to measure another two items. Why? Because the script is under in situ finishing, and then the tiles is under S.11 is another clause. So there are four items to be measured. If you have this one, normally you can see in the kitchen or in the toilet. This one normally in the kitchen or in the, but sometimes in the kitchen and the toilet, you did not have any plaster and painting because all the wall had been finished with the tiles. This one normally available in the bathroom or in the toilet. Okay, so please look at the details carefully. If I put this one in identification of the taking off list, you can see the first one having two items, the second one having four items, and the third one having two items to be measured. So I think this one is quite simple. The most important part is identification of the height. Okay, identification of the height is considered as the most important part. Okay, this okay, let's continue with the measurement principle. So if you look at this measurement principle, I show you two different scenarios where on your left hand side you can see I put this one as H1, this is H1. Okay, this is H2. You can see the difference in terms of the height, because the most important in the wall finishes is by identification of the height. Okay, so let's we look at this one again. This is the scenario where you have timber skirting. Timber skirting is measured on the floor, but that will affect timber skirting and tile skirting. That will affect the wall finishes later. Okay, if we have timber skirting, that not required to use script, not required script. Okay, for example, if you have timber skirting that use adhesive, or maybe just use glue, or maybe this skirting is made from aluminium strip. This is normally not required script behind. So whatever finishes for the skirting that is not required, whatever in situ finishes for the skirting that is not required to use script, then the height that you have to measure for the wall will be H1. Okay, that means from the lowest until the top. But what if you have the skirting? Okay, what if you have the skirting that is made from tiles or blocking? Okay, this is blocking under S.11 and S.8. You can see that behind this tile they are screen. So if they are screen, this one definitely will affect the height of the wall finishes. Okay, I give you an example. If you use parquet, or if you clay, or if you use tiles, okay, whatever type of the in situ finishes that requires grit or in situ behind or as a backing, then the height of the wall finishes will be H2. Why I put this one in two different category? Because I want you to see the height. The height for H2 will be started from the top of your skirting. So that will be the difference in terms of the height. So it is very important for you to see the relationship between the material that you use for the wall and the material that you use for the skirting for the floor finishes. Okay. Now, we look at the example of the item to be measured. As what I told you before, we have either screed and the tiles, we have either plaster and painting, but I would like to go to the in situ finishes. So in situ finishes that we refer here is either plaster and is either screed. Okay, so if you look at this photo, this is the photo to show the wall finishes is being installed on the screeded bed. And if you look at how the bed is being installed, this is not really smooth. This is rough surface. You need to get this rough surface, and you normally have to knock a little bit with the small hammer to make sure that they are stable and the jointing are there. Okay, so look at the difference between number 1 until number 4. Number 1, cement and sand screed to receive 100 to 100 mm glaze tile. It is normal that the wall finishes is using glaze tile. Normally, the tiles will be cheaper because you don't have to achieve certain height because that is not homogeneous. Okay, it is normally used for the decoration purposes. So glaze tile is one of the famous category of the wall tiles. Glaze tile, let me change color. Okay, number 2, ditto, but to receive different category of the tiles. Okay, the second one is using porcelain tile. Porcelain and ceramic tile is different, yeah, normally expensive, and the surfaces is neat compared to normal ceramic tiles. Number 3, after you finish all these two in situ, number 3 and number 4 are actually the tile itself. Okay, so this one is under S.2 and S.10. S.2 to show in situ finishes in terms of description. S.10.2 to show if you have different category of the tiles, or you have screed or beds and backing to receive another category of the tiles and another type of different types of the finishes. You have to measure separately. Okay. And 3 and 4 is according to S.11. See, number 3 is ceramic tiles. Number 4 is for porcelain tile on the screed bed. So there are 4 items to be mentioned in this category. Okay, look at this example. This is example that I would like to show in 2 different areas. Original wall height is given as 3500. This is normally according to the story height. Okay, if you go inside the building, okay, let's say this is outside. Let's say this one is outside or outside toilet. Or maybe we can say this area is the kitchen. Okay, and then this is in the toilet or in bathroom. So when you go inside the bathroom, normally you have to drop, isn't it? Okay, when you have to drop, you have to consider this drop to be used as the reference for you to get the height. Okay, in order for you to get the height of the wall finishes, you have to consider the drop. Okay, this drop area must be deducted. Let's say you want to measure the area. Okay, let's say you want to measure the area. You need to take the length on plan. Right? You have to take the length on plan and you have to consider the height. So it depends on what item that you have to measure. If you need to measure the wall tiles for 2550, so the balance of this one should be plaster and painting. This one is plaster and painting. If you are given the specification where they are the wall tiles, how many items to be measured? 2 items. Wall tiles plus screed. Okay, so in this case, there are items that you have to measure. But what I would like to highlight is, if you would like to measure the area inside this bathroom, and you need to take the area by referring to length on plan times the wall tiles, you have to consider the deduction area of the drop. Deduction area of the drop. So this is the example. You already get the dimension Okay, by referring to length, deduct the width, and so on, the thickness of the wall. Then this is the example where you have to deduct the door area, but you don't forget to deduct the area below the door where you have the drop. Okay, so the height of the door to be deducted in this case is the height according to the actual height of the door. If you refer to this example, this is the example of the measurement for the screeded bed. Okay, for the screeded bed and for the tiles where the door is below the wall tiles. The door is below this. So when you would like to deduct this door height, you can take the whole dimension of the door height. Okay, now let's look at the second example. This is a second example to show the height of the wall to be deducted together with the area of the door to be deducted together with the size of your door. So you don't have to deduct separately. Look at this. 2.2 come from the door plus the height of the drop. If you would like to show the dimension one by one, you can do this way. This is the area of the door. This is the area of the drop. Why we need to deduct? Because the drop is already measured under floor finishes. If you would like to show everything in one calculation, this one must be properly shown. The height of the door plus the height of the drop. Okay, so when you do it this way, you only have to show one time deduction. This is the first example. Now look at the second example. Now if you look at the second example, the wall tiles is below the door height. So what I would like you to be careful in this example is you need to show the deduction of the door until this one. Let's say now we are measuring the wall tiles. The wall tiles plus the screed. So when you need to deduct the door height, you need to follow the door height that is attached with the wall tiles. Okay, now let's look at this example. As usual, you have to find the length, the width. Okay. Now, if you look at this one, the height of the wall is equal to the specification that had been given, because we know that the tiles is equal to the screed 185 or 1.85. But remember, you have to deduct the drop area. Okay, you have to deduct the drop area. Either you want to combine or you want to do it separately. Now, if I would like to show you one by one, you can see the wall tiles deduct the drop. That is 1.75. 0.75 is the width of the door. It is normal to have 750 times 2100 for the size of the door. Okay, so this one, don't forget to deduct the drop. This is in case if you need to measure separately. If you would like to show the measurement of the drop separately, so you have to show the deduction separately. So this is the second example. Okay, and if you look at from the elevation view, this is how it looks like. This is how it looks like where the actual door size is until here, but when you need to measure the wall, tiles, and the screed, you have to only deduct this area for the door. Look at this. Okay. Now let's move to the third example. This is the third example to show the height, of the screed to receive the wall, and to show the example of the explanation and description for the tiles. If you look at this one, this is exactly similar as the floor finishes, but what you have to change is only write down surfaces of the wall and column. Okay, now we move to the second category. Second category, we have plaster and painting. So plaster, you have to measure as usual as 0.2. This is in situ finishing, but painting, you have to measure similar like before under painting to the surfaces of the plastering under section U 0.1.1, and how you want to write the description is under U 4.1. Okay, painting work shall be given shall be measured as the work for the area covered. You can refer to this explanation in terms of right description, and if you have the work on the surfaces over 300 mm girth shall be given in meter square, And if you have the surfaces that is isolated, and then that is where the curve is less than 300 mm, you have to measure in meter. This is very important category that you have to highlight. But then for the wall finishes, definitely the surfaces is over 300 mm curve. Okay, now let's look at this example. This is the example. I show you two different areas. Always imagine that this is two different areas because I would like to show in two different scenario. Okay, this is outside, this is inside or the other area. Okay, this is example number 4. You can see the plastering in the kitchen with the drop. Okay, so if you need to measure here, if you need to measure the area for the kitchen, you have to consider the drop. So that means if I ask you, okay, now what is the height of the plastering at the kitchen? You have to take 3,500 plus 100 mm because originally the height is until here. So you need to consider another height for the drop. But of course, if we have the area that is going to be dropped, you have to measure by deducting the area of this drop. Okay, look at this example. This is the example of the photo for the plastering. We cannot just paint on the surfaces of this face work or on these surfaces of the brick. We have to put the plaster so that you get very smooth surface to paint. Okay. Cement and sand, plaster with approved plasticizer as described. This is a method of the application. And then remember, you have to write down the thickness on the surfaces of the thickness of the plastering, then on the surfaces of wall and column. This is the example where you get the area for the bathroom by ×4 because all having the similar sizes. Okay, let's say the sizes are 2000 times 2000. Let's say this is example 2000 times 2000. So you measure by showing this dimension, okay, and then the story height, let's say, is given as 3.6. This is the example. How you get 3.6? Because we consider the drop, so that you have to get the actual depth. Okay, and then the height of the door to be deducted is the actual height of the door. And then you also need to consider the deduction area for the drop. So what you need to do after this, you have to deduct the area of the drop below the deduction of the door area. Okay, what if you have skirting? What if you have skirting? Okay, if you look at this, the wall height is given at 3,500. Okay, now the skirting is in similar material as the floor finishes. So what you need to do first, you have to identify the types of skirting. The types of skirting. If the skirting is made from timber, that not require. Sorry, I put here. If it is made from timber, the height is until floor. But if it is made from the tiles that is required to have scrape, okay, that requires scrape, then you have to take the height from. We have to take the height from the top of the scrape. Height from top of skirting. Okay, so this very important requirement. Okay, if you look at this, I put in blue color. This is the height of the plaster for the wall with the tile skirting. For the tile skirting, you have to take H2 as what I told you before. Okay, number 2, in red color, this is the height of plaster with aluminum strip or timber skirting. But remember, if this timber skirting is using script, you cannot take H in red color. If the timber skirting is using glue or adhesive, then you can take this H1. So if I put again according to the requirement, this is H2, this is H1. This label is created by myself. Yeah, there is no requirement H1 and H2 in the SMM2. But what I would like to show you here is the skirting will affect the height of the wall finishes that is required to be measured. Okay, so this is the example. Let's say the skirting is given as 100 mm, but the skirting is made from timber. So if the skirting is made from timber, you can remain the height of the wall finishes to be 3.5. Okay, now let's look at the example for the combination of the tiles and plaster and painting. Okay, the question here is how you want to measure the painting. This one is very simple. Number one, you have to consider the drop. So what you need to do is, if you need to measure the balance of this painting, number one, you have to take the wall height plus the drop. Then you get the actual drop area, actual wall finishes area. So 3500 plus drop. And after you get this answer, 3600, what you need to do? You have to deduct the wall tiles. So here, red color pen, you have to deduct 2550. Then you get the balance. You get the balance of the area. Let's say I put here as A. So that will be the height of painting and the height of your plaster. Plaster and painting, wall tiles and script. That is the category. Okay, look at this example. This is another example for the painting. Okay, this is another example for the painting. Overall wall height is 3,500. We add in the drop before we deduct the wall tiles. So what are the balance of the height that you will get? 1050. And this quantity will be equal to the quantity of your plastering. Okay, either one. If you want to measure plastering first, then you have to take this quantity. Then after that, you measure for the painting. Okay, this is the example for deduction of the door, or maybe deduction of the window that is still attached within the 1050 area. Okay, for example, let's say, okay, this is the wall tiles. This is your plaster and painting. If you have the window here, that means you have to deduct. Okay, this is only example. At the plaster and paint area, they are window, so you have to deduct. Okay, next one. This is another example, but I would like to highlight here the area of the door that you have to deduct if the wall tiles is below the door area. Because sometimes I already give you the wall tiles 1850, and then the student need to deduct the area of the door. So they simply take deduction of the door for the whole area. That is definitely wrong. So what you need to do is you have to only deduct the area for the door here to measure the wall tiles, and then when you measure the painting, you have to deduct the door area at this point only. Okay, this is the area, or this is the height of the door to be deducted for item number 4, and this is the door area that need to be deducted for item wall tiles and discrete. Please take note on this category. Look at this example. This is the example for deduction of the door D1 in green color, this area. Okay, so we have to show deduction. How you can take the whole door height, then deduct, add in the drop, then after that only you deduct the wall tile. So you get the balance of 350. The width of the door are similar, 0.75. Okay, this is the example where the door is attached with 1850 height. So you have to deduct the W3. This is example. But what I would like to highlight is make sure you deduct the door according to what had been attached to the components. Okay, this is the example where the door that need to be deducted that is attached with the painting. Look at this. This is painting. Next example is the height for the painting. If you have the tiles or marble skirting. I think this one I highlighted before, but just to highlight again. And this is the height and plaster that is also similar with the skirting. Similar with the tiles. So in this case, the height of the plaster is similar with the height of the painting. Okay, next one. You can see here, let's say the height of the tile skirting is given as 100 mm. Okay, so when you need to measure for the plaster and painting, where there is for the plaster and painting only, you have to deduct the skirting. Look at this. So the height of the wall finishes will be now reduced to 100 mm. Okay, another example is the height of the height for the painting. If we have the timber skirting, so for the timber skirting, the height will remain unchanged. Look at this, remain unchanged. No deduction should be made. But if no deduction, you don't have to show this one. This is only for my notes to inform all of you so that you don't have to make any deduction. Okay. Okay, I think this is the second last. Sorry, this is the last part. If you have the wall height, and then you have the drop plus the skirting. Okay, now how you want to measure this area? If you go to the kitchen, for example, this is dining area. This is the kitchen. You go to the kitchen, you can see that they are drop 150 mm. Okay, and then at the drop area, they are skirting. So let's say I ask you to measure what is the height of the plaster and painting. What you need to do first, you have to take 3,500 plus 150 mm. Then you have to consider the type of the skirting. Then you get the area for plaster and painting. Okay, look at this example. This is the example for the painting. 3,500, add the drop, then deduct the skirting. You get 3,550. Okay, so that will be the last example for this topic. If you have any question, then we can discuss more during the studio. Thank you very much.